There's been a lot of highs, there's been a lot of lows, but it's not stopped me doing anything. I know some people find that quote, diabetes won't stop you doing anything, but actually for me, it's not stopped me doing anything. It might take me a bit bloody longer to get there, but actually it's not going to stop me. And I think community is huge. People are so kind and people get it. The one thing that makes me feel a lot better is running. When my marriage broke down, I was in a very unhealthy state of mind. I ran every day. My appetite was really, really poor. I lost a ton of weight. I was insulin resistant all the time because I was stressed, and it was the only thing that brought my sugars down a little bit. Yeah. My best friend said to me, should we do the London 10K? We trained for it, did the 10K. When I went to university, we're on the 3rd floor and me and my uni friends were in the kitchen. I said to them, somebody's flashing a light over there at us in the other apartment. So I went and got my torch and started flashing it through the window. They came and joined me and they said, Chloe, I can't see anybody flashing the light. I said, no, it's definitely flashing. No, it was me having a...
Hi everyone, welcome to TypeCast Life Between the Lines, a diabetes podcast that goes beyond the target glucose. I'm your host, Natalie Balmain, winner of Channel 4's Make Me Prime Minister, Omnipod Ambassador, and General Do-Gooder of Diabetes. Juggling the ups and downs of diabetes can be challenging, so I'm here to connect you to some real people with real stories who all have one thing in common: type 1 diabetes. We'll be talking to some amazing guests over the course of this series, sharing laughs, tears, insights, and inspirational stories. So whether you're a seasoned pro or newly diagnosed, I hope you enjoy the podcast. If you do, you can make sure to watch, download, listen, and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, or your favorite podcast app. I hope you enjoy the show. TypeCast the podcast features real stories from real people living with diabetes. But of course, none of this should be taken as medical advice. Always seek advice from your diabetes specialist team before making any changes. Hi, Diabesties, and welcome to another special episode of TypeCast Life Between the Lines, live from Madrid at EASD. And I am delighted to introduce another inspirational guest for you today. It is my friend, the beautiful Chloe Andrews. Hello, Chloe.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for coming all this way and joining us in beautiful sunny Madrid.
Thank you for inviting me.
So you've just arrived this morning, haven't you?
Yes. Yeah, got in at 10. Had a quick explore and then straight over here.
Have you had a run yet?
Not a run yet.
Not a run
Tomorrow.
yet. We'll talk all about your running in a little bit anyway. But just to take people right back to the start, because you were quite young when you were diagnosed, weren't you?
I was, yeah.
How old were you?
So it was 2 weeks before my 5th birthday.
Wow.
1989.
Wow.
And my mum took me to the GP and I ended up going back and forth quite a lot.
Oh, really? They didn't?
It wasn't an immediate diagnosis.
Okay.
And I remember being in reception class at school and sitting and weeing on the carpet.
Oh, my God.
I also remember hiding under tables and just crying all the time. And
that's devastating.
That's not me. You know, I'm
that's
not
a child.
That's not a
5-year-old.
Exactly.
Let's be honest.
Exactly. And I remember Mum now recalls, she says, I remember putting you in the bath and being able to count in each individual rib on your back where I'd lost so much weight.
So I don't need to ask why your mum was taking you to the GP.
Absolutely.
That's quite terrifying. So you went back and forth. I know you might not remember yourself, but has your mum told you how long it took to get that diagnosis and what happened?
So once I was really symptomatic, I then got admitted straight to hospital.
Right.
The other thing I had a massive boil on the palm of my hand, which was just filled with like sugary fluid where my sugar was so high.
That's fascinating. I've never heard of that before.
Because obviously one of the signs that people maybe don't talk about so much is poor wound healing, or getting spots, all those different kind of things. So I guess that was probably a sign that just wasn't known at the time.
Wow. I mean, my unusual symptom that I often mention to people is that my nails weren't growing.
Oh, really?
So I was 20 when I was diagnosed 3 months before my 21st birthday. And this was, I was getting ill over the late 2006. I was diagnosed 7th of January 2007. And I had, acrylic false nails on.
Yeah.
And I remember I must have had them done about 4 weeks before. So they should have been having infills. And I looked and I went, well, that's great. For some reason, they haven't grown that much. Don't need to get them infills. And I didn't think that was a weird or for some reason, I was just took that as a good thing. Like, great, I don't have to get my nails done again. But then obviously looking back, I went, oh, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, that's not a known symptom, is it?
No, but it makes sense when you think about it.
Absolutely.
But I'm really pleased that you shared that with us, because I think, probably there are people out there who just had other things happen to them and just thought, oh, maybe I'm just falling apart at the seams. But actually it's a symptom of your type 1.
Absolutely. And
wow.
I think when you're older as well, adults being diagnosed, people complain about things not healing quite as well, or something might get a bit mucky, when it is healing. It's just, definitely a symptom.
And I'm a klutz. I'm an absolute klutz. So I do remember, grazing myself a couple of times and thinking, that's taken a while.
A long time. Yeah. Absolutely.
Interestingly, it's also the reason I stopped having tattoos.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I remember getting them very last, and it's actually the one I'm having removed, and it didn't heal well.
Okay.
And when obviously tattoos don't heal well, they can be patchy and other things. And I went, well, that's it now. I'm done.
You're done. Yeah. Done. Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely.
So it's one of those things. Okay, so you diagnosed. What was your treatment plan like at that, late 80s, early 90s,
yeah. So
5 years old?
We didn't have a glucose monitor.
No.
My mum used to chase me around with a needle, and we used to put blood on a dipstick, like a urine dipstick. Yeah. She used to wipe it off and compare it with a colour chart. So it might be a blood sugar between about 4 and 10. You wouldn't know where.
Wow.
And then I remember my first glucose monitor, because it was the size of a brick, and it was really exciting. And the first finger pricker was like a guillotine that would prick your finger, really hurt.
Yeah.
And it took 2 minutes to read.
Wow.
So, if you were having a hypo, you were scuppered, really, weren't you?
That's crazy. Yeah,
amazing. But I was on 2 injections a day. Didn't really test much.
Yeah, well, if that's the process for testing, absolutely. How can you?
Yeah, absolutely. And from a regime point of view, I was always eating Weetabix for breakfast, digestive biscuit for a snack, a packed lunch, digestive biscuit in the afternoon, have my tea, and then a digestive biscuit before bedtime as well.
That's incredibly regimented.
It's really
for
regimented.
A child. Yeah.
I know. Put me off digestive biscuits for life as well.
You can't look at a digestive biscuit anymore. And what about things like normal kid things, like going to a birthday party or having your own birthday party?
Yeah, I was actually really, really lucky. All my friends, all their parents, they embraced it.
Really
so I've
nice.
never ever missed a sleepover. I've never missed a party. I never missed a sports event. And my mum was always really encouraging. As soon as I could start injecting myself, it was all up to me.
I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. She was a huge advocate.
Yeah, because we talk to a lot of people who, and everybody's different, and I can totally understand why a lot of parents want to do it all and make sure that they've got oversight of it. But some people have mentioned to us then about that transition of becoming an adult and then trying to take over for yourself. So I think having that autonomy from young, because kids are super resilient and they
really
pick
resilient.
Things up.
Yeah, massively.
So, I think that's really nice, and that's really a really important point to make.
Absolutely.
So you've just talked then about your amazing friends and their parents, and that kind of leads me nicely into talking about support.
Yeah.
Because, we talk about tech and we talk about, pharmaceutical industry and the insulins and whatever, but I've always said the number one sort of tool in your toolkit is support. And it's interesting because mostly when we talk about that, so we talk about the community and peer support. And I do want to talk about that. But you've also brought another nice bit in, is that support of the non-type 1 community and other people around you.
Yeah.
And that's really, really beautiful. And obviously made a huge difference to your life and allowed you to have a childhood.
Absolutely. And actually, I've recently celebrated my 40th birthday.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And we all went to Portugal, me and my childhood friends.
Oh.
And sadly, one of my best friends, her daughter got diagnosed with type 1 diabetes. And it's very rarely that I let other people touch my tech or my pump. And she was the only person I thought, do you know what? I'm really happy for her to do that. And all of them carried something in case I had a hypo. They're amazing. They're really, really good.
That's so wonderful.
Yeah.
And it must have been comforting for your friend to know that she had you to talk to, and that her daughter had you to talk to.
Absolutely.
So let's talk about the community, because there is a very important reason why I do this and you do what you're doing. Yeah. Is this your first podcast, by the way?
It is.
Ah!
Yeah.
I'm so happy. We got all these amazing people coming on and talking, but very serious reason why we do it, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it is that toolkit.
Yeah.
Because I've talked to some people, and a lot of people suggest, I think most of us went, maybe, I don't know about you, but most of us had a period where we disengaged or didn't want to engage with our type 1. And a lot of people have said to me the moment that changed for them was when they found the community. And, I think sometimes, for all of us who live with it, we understand that. But sometimes the wider community, like healthcare professionals and other support roles, don't actually realize what a big deal this is.
Yes, it's
this
huge.
Peer support.
Yeah, it's huge.
So obviously you were diagnosed a long time before the online community and stuff like that. Do you remember your first sort of point of access to the type 1 community?
Yeah, I think I definitely remember childhood events. So we used to go to diabetic fun days as families, which was good. And I kept in touch with another diabetic when I was younger, and we kept in touch for some years, and then we've drifted apart. And then throughout my life, I've always come into contact with other type 1s, even though before tech existed, you always found a dia buddy somewhere, and I think that's hugely important. But in terms of more recent times, I would definitely say it's been over the last few years, and I think there's a really, really big drive for adult peer support, because I think the thing we see at the moment is, I think children have got really specific diabetic teams now, which is amazing. Something I never had. I don't know if you had.
No.
And in terms of mental health support, there wasn't anything there. You literally were under a paediatrician, and they might have specialised from anything from neurology to diabetes. And you were literally put to the adult team from the age of 16. So actually, this is such an important thing. So I think there's periods of time where you talk about disengagement. I think it's that burnt out feeling where actually you're trying really hard, but you get complacent. And I think it's the complacency is where you need just somebody to say, I understand that, I get that, I know what you're going through. And that's become really important for me, I think. Yeah.
And actually, I think all of the psychological sort of symptoms of burnout.
Yeah.
There is the complacency and for the depression. Yeah. Once you start to not care about yourself or go, I don't care if I'm here or I'm not here. Yeah. Why would you put all that investment and time and energy into yourself?
Absolutely. It's so important.
And there are, and I always talked about the gaps in the system. So my period of disengagement came because it was in compound with other things. Yeah. So I was diagnosed while I was in a relationship that wasn't so great. Yeah. Somebody who didn't make me feel good about myself. Yeah. And so my disengagement kind of twofold. One, I was burnt out, but two, I went, well, he keeps complaining about the way that I look. So if I don't take my insulin, I'm going to get slimmer, and maybe I'll be more attractive. And that was when I noticed the gaps in the system, because I ended up in hospital. Obviously, I wasn't taking my insulin. But when they realized that there was a sort of disordered eating aspect to it, then they wanted to send me to the disordered eating people. But of course, the disordered eating team went, well, no, you're type 1. We can't look after you. This is too much for us. Send you back to the A&E team. The A&E team went, well, we can't deal with disordered eating. Send you. And you kind of went, oh, so no one.
Yeah.
So when you engage with the community, okay, I will say this like I always say, none of us are medical professionals. We're lived experience people. None of this should be deemed as medical advice. However, hearing from other people who have the same lived experience can be incredibly comforting and can be something that makes a psychological shift in you that can help.
Absolutely. And I think in terms of the disordered eating, I think there's a really, really strong link with it. And it resonates with me, what you've said. I didn't stop taking my insulin, but I was very conscious in terms of weight. I was very conscious in terms of I might eat whole bags of crisps, chocolate bar, and go from one extreme to the other.
Yeah.
There was no in between.
And I think that whether we like it or not, we have to count our food.
Yeah.
We have to count our carbohydrates. But once you're counting your carbohydrates, it's not so difficult to count your calories.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then to see everything as a number.
Yeah.
And actually, I made a joke out of it recently. Again, we've got to try and find humor in these things. It's not a joke, but there was the viral thing with Kendrick Lamar and the song like "They Not Like Us, They Not Like Us." And I remember I did a video that was like when you see a non-diabetic just eating food without thinking, and I'm like.
It's amazing, isn't it? It takes you so much longer, doesn't it? And it's that mental, oh gosh, I've got to deal with this now. Am I going to spike with this? And again, everything comes back to food, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So I think, it's such a common thing. And I think it's only when it's spoken about, you start to resonate with others.
Yeah.
And
you speak to people and you say something like, oh, this happened to me. And 5 people are like, oh, yeah, that happens to me all the time. Oh, thank God, I'm not a total freak.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, yes, I mean, amazing reason why we do what we do in the community. But you take it even a step further than me because you run, don't you? You run for JDRF, now Breakthrough T1D. But you do a lot of running and a lot of fundraising for them.
Yeah.
Were you always like, oh, I just enjoy running for what it is? Or was that something to help you as well a little bit with your type 1?
Yeah. So for me, it was for my mental health.
Yeah.
My marriage broke down 3 years ago. And I wholeheartedly open admit I suffer from depression.
Yeah.
The black dog follows me. And I accept I'm probably going to be on medication, medicine for life. That's fine. That's not a problem. I've accepted that. But the one thing that makes me feel a lot better is running. Now, I'm not very good at it, but...
I mean, I can't say anything because I don't run at all. So I'm sure you're great. And even if you're not great, if you enjoy it, that's the point, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's not
massively.
I hate this idea that we have to be training to be an Olympic athlete to do something, or you have to be wanting to be professional to do something. I'm a terrible singer. I love singing. I'm not going to stop singing just because I'm not trying to be Taylor Swift.
Very true. Very true. Very true.
So the running helps you.
It massively helps. And my running started picking up. And I initially, when my marriage broke down, I was again probably in a very unhealthy state of mind. I ran every day. My appetite was really, really poor. And I lost a ton of weight. I went down to 7 stone. I was insulin resistant all the time because I was stressed as well.
Yeah.
And it was the only thing that brought my sugars down a little bit.
Yeah.
And it helped. It helped. And then my best friend said to me, should we do the London 10K? And we trained for it. And I always remember thinking, we're never going to be able to run 10K. That's really, really hard. Actually, I'm not even going to be able to run 5K.
Yeah.
And I kept training and did the 10K in 57 minutes. So I was really, really happy with that. And felt really sick at the end because I'd run so hard and my heart rate was so high. But it went to plan. It went well. And because we both turned 40 this year, she said, do you know what? Shall we apply for the London Marathon?
Amazing.
So we'll tick it off our bucket list and we'll do it together. We'll both raise funds for JDRF. Because it's you know, she's got two friends. That she's got a friend that's got a daughter with it. She's got me, and now she knows so many other people with it, which is good because obviously the community.
And they are amazing. Let's
yeah.
face it, the community are awesome.
Absolutely. So yes, we applied to run for JDRF,
Amazing.
and there was a team of 200 of us.
Wow.
And we raised over £600,000, which
Wow.
is amazing. And the training was so hard.
Yeah.
I was not long on a closed loop, and I found I become ketotic quite quickly running because I was forever almost like in a fasting state.
Yes.
I needed loads of hydration, and obviously running and competing, you know, when you're doing extreme sports with the loop, they're still learning so much about it. So I worked lots with my team at the hospital.
Amazing.
And lots with my tech team as well, and they were amazing. And I managed to do it in 4 hours and 40 minutes, which was really good.
Incredible.
Couldn't walk the next day. And there was I remember somebody holding up a sign saying, put your hands up if you peed your pants. Now, I remember going past every toilet and there was a queue so long there that I thought, I'll just go to the next one. And then
there was a queue.
Yeah. So I did pee my pants. So my hands are up. I did a Paula Radcliffe and peed my pants.
I love so, you know that's going to be the soundbite of this episode, don't you, Chloe? Chloe peed her pants.
Chloe peed her pants.
That is brilliant. And congratulations, because that is an absolutely phenomenal achievement.
Thank you.
But it's not the only amazing achievement in your life, because you're a mum as well.
I am a mum.
Tell us about that, because obviously, you know, you were diagnosed at 5. I don't need to ask you whether you were type 1 during your pregnancy. You definitely were.
Yeah.
How was that?
So it's a very happy ending, but it wasn't a good time. I was told before I got pregnant by my diabetic nurse at the time, this is a completely different hospital, she was very old school, that I'd have a stillbirth.
That's a dreadful thing to say.
Yes, I was so fearful. She said, you'll have a big baby. You might, you know, you're very likely to have a stillbirth. And that put the fear of God into me, you know.
Understandably.
And I worked so hard at getting my HbA1c down. And I tried loads of different things. And I eventually got my HbA1c down. And throughout my pregnancy, my HbA1c was amazing. I spent most time hypo because I was so worried about high sugars because of stillbirth, you know. And the diabetic team, I wouldn't say I had the most support from them. I tended to do a lot of it myself. I knew I was going to be booked in for a cesarean. Yeah. And they wanted to push for me to have an induction of labour and try and have a vaginal delivery.
Okay.
Now, at 34 weeks, my son Finn, who's such a sweetie, he was coming up on his scan as being too big. Okay. So start to panic about stillbirth. So I was told I needed to have steroid injections to strengthen his lungs, not his legs, his lungs, just because he was most likely going to be born early. And I remember they always said at the hospital, if you suddenly find you are having a hypo and you can't get out of hypo for hours and hours, you need to contact us because that's a sign your placenta's failing. And I remember sat on one of those yoga balls doing my pelvic floor and, you know, preparing myself ready for my vaginal birth, and which never happened. And my blood sugar just plummeted. And it stayed low all night. And I phoned them first thing in the morning and they said, you're going to have to come in for an induction of labour. So I went in for an induction of labour and the induction didn't work. So 12 hours later, they gave me another pessary to see if they could induce labour. And again, it didn't work. So they left me another 12 hours.
That seems unnecessarily traumatic.
It's a very long time. Yeah. And I started to have really irregular contractions. And my mum came down, and my husband as well was there at the time. And they kept saying, when will she just go for a cesarean because she's not progressing? And I don't recall this. My mum really recalls this. They just said, no, we really need to get her to have a vaginal delivery. So I then opted for an epidural, and they broke my waters to try and push labour on. And still another 12 hours, nothing had happened. So at that point, Finn, who's my son, was getting really distressed, and they said, sorry, it makes me a bit emotional talking about it.
Of course, rightly so.
They said they took blood gases from the top of his head, and they said he was really distressed. So they rushed me for cesarean, and he ended up being forceps out at cesarean because he was so stuck, and he was really poorly. So he had some resuscitation, and he was then put on my breast, and I had no help from any of the midwives to feed him. And I was just expected to feed him. And he was 8 pounds 3. So he was a good size. And I had him at 36 weeks and 6 days. So he was a big boy, but he was probably going to be a big boy. I was a big baby, you know, and my sugars, as I said, were amazing. But he started during that night to do these jerking movements. He looked like he was startled the whole time. And his blood sugar was 0.8. And rather than, and I was absolutely, you know, delusional at the time because I was so tired, I was exhausted. But rather than take him to Skaboo and give him glucose, I was encouraged to keep putting him on the breast. And I know now that actually when you're diabetic and any type of diabetes, your milk production takes a lot longer to come in. And obviously he was getting nothing from me. So he was starving. He was having hypoglycemic fits and seizures. So he ended up, my husband ended up going and buying formula and getting formula straight into him. And he had a couple of days of seizure-like activity, still no monitoring really. And we were discharged home. And I kept checking his sugar at home.
Good for you.
On his heel, just because I was so worried about him having hypos. But he's absolutely fine, because that could have, you know, being hypo could have given him major brain damage.
So traumatic.
He's amazing. Nothing wrong with him. He's got a bit of selective hearing, but you know.
that's all boys.
Absolutely.
Oh, Chloe, I just want to give you a big hug.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that with us, because I can see how difficult that was for you, and it was making me well up, because you just shouldn't have had to go through that. That is particularly.
Yeah.
And we talked before a little bit, didn't we, about gaps in systems, in healthcare and in knowledge and things like that. But those midwives should have known about breastfeeding and type 1.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wrote a complaint.
Good.
And he was brought up as a near miss. And funny enough, 2 months later, the protocol at the hospital changed.
Good.
And so although it was a negative at the time, I'm really pleased that actually ladies that have got any form of diabetes and they're having a baby, if they've not had an induction by 12 hours, if they've not given birth after 12 hours of induction, they're straight down for cesarean.
Good. You can be incredibly proud of that change.
Thank
and
you.
It's dreadful that you had to go through what you did.
Thank you.
But the fact that you followed up on that and made sure that that hospital was aware of the mistakes they've made, such an important part of the process.
Yeah. I'm not under that hospital anymore,
Yeah.
only because I find it too traumatic.
Of course.
I had really bad postnatal depression afterwards. And I decided to move my care. I couldn't go back. So,
and I think that's perfectly understandable. You know, we have to spend so much of our time in hospital, even outside of things like pregnancy.
Absolutely.
So, you know, and actually that's another important point that I think it should be made, is that as type 1s, we do actually have a say in our secondary care.
Absolutely.
And not everybody knows that. They get referred to a hospital and they stay there even if they're not comfortable or happy there. And actually it's well worth pointing out to people that you can request a change to another hospital.
Yeah.
And in fact, I did it as well, because I was under the care of one, you know, in Manchester, there's lots of hospitals, under the care of one hospital in Manchester, and it wasn't working for me. And I moved to another one and it does work.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And everybody is different, and what works for some person might not for another person, but it's important to know that you've got that choice.
Yeah. And the thing is as well, you know, teams can be a bit like Marmite,
yes,
aren't they?
Absolutely.
You either love them or you hate them.
Absolutely.
And if you don't get on, you're absolutely right. It's important to speak out and say. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for sharing all of that with us, Chloe.
Worries.
I think that's an episode that people are going to find particularly interesting, and it's just really brave of you to open up and share all of that with us. So I know people are going to be really grateful to you.
Thank you.
But I'm not going to let you go just yet, if that's okay. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to be back with a little bit more of the sort of light-hearted side of living with type 1.
Not a problem.
All right, everybody, please don't go away. We're going to be back after a short message from our sponsor. Since being diagnosed with type 1 diabetes back in 2007, I was determined not to let it get in the way of me living my life. But of course, living with diabetes is hard. You're doing the job of a pancreas. Now, I'd seen insulin pumps before, but I'd never really thought of myself as a pump person. Then in 2018, I discovered there was a tubeless pump called Omnipod, and I jumped at the chance to give it a try. Using Omnipod gives me all the benefits of an insulin pump, but the freedom of living without tubes. I can use the bolus calculator to help me work out my doses. I can bolus discreetly at a restaurant without having to go to a bathroom to do an injection. I can wear what I want without worrying about sticking tubes and an end of a pump up my dress somewhere. And all of this with the added benefit of one cannula insertion every 3 days instead of multiple injections a day. Now, I know that changing therapy can be daunting, but in my experience, when I moved to Omnipod, my only thought was, why didn't I do this sooner? So if you're thinking about giving Omnipod a go, you can order a pod experience kit from omnipod.com/typecast and give it a try today. The link is also in the bio. Now, back to the show. Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining us for part 2 of this episode of Typecast with the beautiful Chloe. Thanks for staying with me, Chloe.
Thank you for having me.
And, you know, we talked about some really heavy stuff in the first half. So I'm going to try and lift the mood slightly, because let's be honest, life with type 1 is tough.
Yes.
But it's relentless. And if we didn't find humour in something and some parts of it, like we just couldn't cope, could we?
No,
we
not at all.
So I know that everyone who lives in the type 1 community has had some kind of experience that you can look back and go, well, that was a real hiccup, or that was a bit hilarious. Oh God, I've got tales for days, but have you got a story you'd like to share with everybody?
I think the best one was probably when I went to university.
Okay.
So I was having a hypo, had no idea, but it was dark and it was quite a new block of halls of residence, and we're on the 3rd floor, and me and my uni friends were in the kitchen, and I said to them, and I really remember it as well, I said to them, somebody's flashing a light over there at us in the other apartment. So I said, I'm going to go and get my torch and flash it back at them. So I went and got my torch, the one in case there was a power cut or anything, and started flashing it through the window. And they came and joined me and they said, Chloe, I can't see anybody flashing the light. So I said, no, it's definitely flashing. And then I was adamant they were writing things like with the sparkler, with the light, and then flashing almost like Morse code, light code, to us in the halls of residence. And no, it was me having a hypo.
Oh no,
And,
you were just seeing
yeah.
flashing lights.
Absolutely. And luckily, I had no other symptoms other than flashing lights.
Wow.
Luckily, I was with a group of student nurses that
Is lucky.
you actually, something's not right here. We can't see this light, and there's 5 of us, and there's 1 of her. Something's going on. So
Yeah.
they checked my sugar, got me some dextrose, and off I went. Yeah,
That is
it was all
brilliant.
fine.
I've got to say, flashing lights is definitely a new one for me. Although, you know, I do sometimes get those floaters.
Do you?
Yeah. You know, those little, and you're like, oh,
Yeah.
like, I think that's part of the glazed eye effect that I
Yes.
get, because I know that that's what I can always tell if I can't tell myself that I'm having a hypo and I'm talking to somebody and they start looking at me like this, that my eyes are going. And then I'm like, I'm just going to test my bloods. Hang on.
It's that far away feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, it is that. It's that far away feeling, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
like, ooh,
Absolutely.
It's a good question, actually, because all of us kind of describe it. It's such a difficult thing to describe to somebody who doesn't live with type 1.
Yes.
So how would you describe a hypo? What does it feel like for you?
It's changed so much. I think where I've had type 1 for a long time now, my symptoms aren't classic anymore.
Yeah.
I don't get sweaty. Still get shaky.
Yeah.
But the flashing has remained. So the
Interesting.
flashing in my eye, and it's always my left eye. The other thing, which is slightly embarrassing to say, sometimes I get pins and needles around the bottom, my ladies' bits. Not the nicest,
No.
but it's like my early warning, something's not quite right.
Yeah.
And I very rarely get blurred vision, but it's just poor concentration and the inability to string a decent sentence together.
That is my first symptom.
Is that yours?
Always is.
Yeah.
I start slurring my words.
Do you?
All right. Well, while we're laughing, do you mind if we take it to the next part of the show and I throw
Go
some
for it.
quick fire questions at you?
Go for it.
I promise they're not horrible. I promise. All right. Okay. First one is super easy. Pump or MDI?
Pump.
I mean, that is super easy, isn't it, really?
It's, without a doubt.
Although I have spoken to people who've given very convincing reasons for why they like to be on MDI.
Yeah.
It's another example of why we're all different. In the same vein, CGM or finger pricks?
CGM. 110%.
You can't underestimate, can you?
No.
It seems like a little thing. Oh, you just prick your finger. But when you're doing it however many times a day.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's that time without it, isn't it?
That time without it. And also the thing of, your CGM being able to tell you something before you've thought about it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So, okay, phone or text? Are you a caller or are you a texter?
I'm a bit traditional, if I'm honest.
You like calling
I'm
people?
a bit slow at getting back to people. So yeah, I'd say I prefer a call. Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
I like to chat. I think maybe it's like me being slightly neurotic, but you can't always read emotion in a text.
No, you can't.
And if you text me something and I'm not sure what it means, my first response will be, "Oh, they must hate me."
Yes. Likewise. Likewise.
It's not the case at all. Oh, okay. Insta or TikTok?
Insta. Yeah. I've not actually delved into the world of TikTok yet.
Don't bother.
Oh, really? Okay.
I don't get it.
Okay.
I mean, I get how to use it, but I don't understand why your feed is full of people you don't know.
Yeah. No, I actually even haven't looked at it.
It's a bit weird. It's a bit weird. Okay. All right. Next one. Neither are good choices, but if you had to choose, high or low?
That's
hard, isn't it?
tricky. That's so tricky.
But the answers have been quite interesting.
Yeah. I would say low.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Only because I think you can get out of a low a bit quicker.
I think so. And I think, yes, I think it's the duration of time, isn't it? And when you're high for a long period of time, it's that clagginess of your mouth. It's just that.
And I feel like my legs are made of lead.
Yes.
I feel sick.
Yeah.
I can't talk.
Absolutely.
And what I did notice for the other day, for the first time, and I've lived type 1 for nearly 18 years, I was very high. And at the same time as being very high, a couple of things just happened, like the dog peed in the house when I'd just taken him out for a walk, and something else went wrong, and I had rage.
Did you? Yeah.
I had rage about it. And I do remember thinking, Well, no, that was a blood sugar rage.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I scared myself, actually, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
It was terrifying how angry I was.
Yeah. Because it's the impatience, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not good. Okay, so we've just talked about having a low. If you're going to treat it, juice or sweets?
Sweets.
You're a sweets girl.
Yeah, definitely sweets. And I'll never have the same one twice.
Oh,
yeah.
like a bit of variety.
I do. When you just think, actually, I've had so many Dextros, I've had so many Jelly Babies.
Oh.
Sometimes I go for a Haribo.
Yeah. Yeah,
Sometimes
gummy bear.
Gummy bear.
Oh, what did I get into recently? Skittles.
Oh, yes. Skittles are really good.
Skittles are good. And they're vegan. Did you know Skittles are vegan?
Really? Sour Patch Kids. Yeah, they're vegan too.
Go.
Yeah.
Right. Get all the good sweets tips from Chloe. Okay. A bit of a silly one. Crocs or not?
Not. No.
Apparently, according to some people, they're high fashion now.
Oh, really?
Apparently, Ariana Grande wore a pair. That's all it takes to be high fashion. All right. Last one. HbA1c or time in range?
Time in range. Definitely time in range.
Any reasoning for that in particular?
I think it's very easy to become more focused, more worried on time in range. So that can lead to more burnout.
Yep.
However, your HbA1c isn't telling you what's happening now. And it's a good indicator if you've not got the tech.
Yes.
But actually, I think time in range is better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always said that I felt like HbA1c felt a bit more like an exam. Because it was out of your hands.
Yes, yes.
Because you were just like, there's the blood, and then
Yeah.
you're going to tell me what it is.
Absolutely. And then you're reactive to it, aren't you? Yeah.
Yes. Whereas time in range, I feel like the access to it, but it gives you a bit more control.
Yes.
And you kind of go, okay, I can look at it. Okay, I've not done so well today or this week.
Yes.
I'm going to change it for next week.
Yeah, for sure.
So it feels like you've got a bit more autonomy.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely.
All right, thank you for those, Chloe.
No worries.
That was
Thanks
really
for
great.
asking.
No, not at all. So we're coming up to the end of the show, and I always like to finish on a positive note. See what I did there?
Love it.
So, so do you have like a favorite motivational quote that inspires you, or do you have some advice that you would give to somebody newly diagnosed, or even your younger self?
I think the biggest thing for me would be, I feel very lucky because there's been a lot of highs, there's been a lot of lows, but it's not stopped me doing anything.
Yeah.
And I know some people find that diabetes, that quote, diabetes won't stop you doing anything. But actually for me, it's not stopped me doing anything. It might take me a bit bloody longer to get there, but actually, do you know what? It's not going to stop me.
No.
And I think the community, reach out, talk, the community is huge. And people are so kind and people get it. So do reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. Look for that peer support.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much again, Chloe, for coming on this episode. It's just been really heartwarming and inspirational. And I know that a lot of people are going to have a lot of interest in your story.
Thank you.
If they want to follow you, where can they find you on socials?
You can find me on Instagram at LunRun24 Type 1 Chloe.
Amazing. We'll make sure we put that in the description. And thank you so much again for coming on.
Thanks for having me. Thank
you. And guys, if you have enjoyed today's episode with Chloe, make sure you hit that subscribe button for more content and watch all of our other episodes. And you can get in touch with us on socials as well if you'd like to offer any feedback or just share your own funny stories. Or if you'd like to take it a step further, you can apply to be on an episode of Typecast yourself. Just email us at typecast@intellect.com with your name, age, location, and what you'd like to talk about. And until next time, guys, keep on running. You got this.